Major funding for Eden's Lost and Found is made possible by CDM, seeking to create lasting environmental and infrastructure solutions that strengthen a community's future. The Boeing Company, committed to ongoing innovation in environmental conservation. Boeing, forever new frontiers. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Additional funding is provided by Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, the Illinois Sustainable Education Project, Ashoka, the Scott's Miracle-Gro Company, Seattle Office of Sustainability and the Environment, APTA, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, the Philadelphia Water Department, FJC, and Newman's Own Organics.
In the summer of 1962, my father and I flew in his small plane from Iowa City, Iowa, across half the continent to a place we'd never been, Seattle. The purpose of our epic adventure was to visit the Seattle World's Fair. Christened Century 21, in the brief 6 months of its existence, this fair challenged its near 10 million visitors to experience a world some 40 years in the future. Tomorrow beckoned everywhere. Fashions, automobiles, space travel. The Cold War? Gone. Replaced by global harmony. Science made anything possible. The two boldest proofs utopia could be real towered above and zoomed from the fair to the city. Like Moses witnessing the Promised Land, my dad and I experienced in Seattle the science-inspired Eden to come. Today, over 40 years later, the future is now.
We are tomorrow what we start today.
The 1962 World's Fair affected more than the skyline of Seattle. The people here aren't waiting for the future, they're living it. Today, Seattle is home to some of the most innovative individuals and corporations in our nation, with more arriving every day. The natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest is also an undeniable contributor to Seattle's continuing population growth. But it is this growth that now endangers the city itself. All around the Pacific Northwest, we're witnessing a sea change, so to speak. And at the risk of mixing my metaphors, that canary in the mine shaft is, well, a fish.
It's a wonder of the world, the salmon is, and we got to make sure that that salmon's going to be here from now on.
Born in cold freshwater streams and rivers, baby salmon called fry swim aided by the current downstream to the open sea, where they grow and thrive. Near the end of their life cycle, something triggers a migratory urge in salmon to return to the very stream of their birth, to spawn and die. It's a tough, long journey for these large fish, fighting both gravity and the currents of water rushing against them. Over hundreds of years, enough salmon completed their difficult destiny to ensure the abundance of their species. As he walks along the southern shores of Elliott Bay, Billy Frank descends from a long line of Nisqually fishermen whose fate has always been linked to the salmon.
We talk about salmon like if they're part of our family. It sustained us all of our lives. It's part of the blood that flows through ourselves. My dad lived to be 104 and lived right here all his life. And my mom lived to be 96. And now I'm 73 years old. So I've seen a lot of the environment, and I've seen the bad parts and I've seen the good.
For thousands of generations, salmon and humans coexisted in harmony. This bond was shattered 150 years ago. Interlopers committed both physical and eco-genocide. Fish and native peoples were massacred.
My father, when he was a little boy, he said before the European people that everything was pure. And all of our cedar trees were big, giant cedar trees we could make canoes out of. All of that was here at that time. We never had sugar diabetes. We weren't dying of diseases.
To save the expense of having to feed the survivors, as part of the Stevens Treaty, the federal government granted the Indians the right to fish in their traditional waters. This right was later taken away in the mid-1940s. After that, for over 30 years, the tribes of the Northwest fought through legal means and civil disobedience to regain their right to fish. Billy Frank was arrested over 50 times and grew to become a leader in the Indian rights movement. The cause attracted national attention and sympathy. In 1974, Judge George H. Bolt decreed in favor of the Indians' fishing rights. But the battle was far from over. What good were fishing rights if there were no salmon to catch? Like the buffalo of the plains, salmon in the Northwest had been pushed to near extinction. The cause of this crisis is commercial fishing, hydroelectric dams, and destruction of habitat. The tribes of the Northwest have another fight on their hands, now as protectors of the salmon. Since 1981, Billy Frank has chaired the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission, serving 20 Northwest area tribes in natural resource management.
40 years ago, we didn't have an infrastructure bring people together. Today we have. The leadership is there, the Indian leadership, as well as our technical crew, our science people. We got a public relation department. We write regulations for ourselves now. We don't depend upon the state of Washington. We work with the state of Washington. We work with the federal government. We're partners to make the environment whole.
This area is alive and well, and a lot of that has to do with Billy and the struggles that he's been through and what he's fought for and why we're here today. It is, the environment in this area is strong.
Through tribal education, this stewardship is being passed on to the next generation.
We came up with some of our own curriculum, and it dealt with the salmon habitat, and that's inside our classrooms right now.
The education is the most important thing on what we're trying to do to keep our communities together and healthy and strong.
Billy Frank's about hugs. It's never a handshake. He always got it out there, but he ends up hugging you, so, yeah.
Yep, it's getting cleaner, and that tells us what we're doing. We're doing the right thing. It's just a wonderful place to live. Don't decide to move here or anything, but this is a great place. It takes good people to do good things.
Despite Billy Frank's successes, 90% of the wild Pacific salmon runs are gone, while the national appetite for this delicious food increases. The trickle-down effect of this loss of salmon is everywhere. Almost as though the fate of salmon is linked to the city of Seattle itself. The Seattle area is one of only a few urban watersheds that still maintain large Pacific salmon runs.
There's a lot more recognition in the cities that we got to be careful around the streams. A lot of recognition. We can't keep throwing all that nitrogen on our lawns and have it run right into the stream and expect the salmon to survive.
The local creek had been treated as basically an open sewer for generations, and it's only been in the last 20 years that the neighbors and the city have begun to look at it as an environmental asset and begun to restore that natural value.
To keep pollutants from washing into these streams and the bay during the winter rainy season, and to retain and conserve water for Seattle's dry summer, the city began several pilot programs. Among them is the C Street Project.
The water runs off the street, off the adjoining properties into this swale. All but the largest storms are infiltrated back into the soil, which helps regenerate groundwater, which keeps stream flows going in the summer.
Where the runoff is more severe, cascades are constructed to collect urban pollutants.
And as you can see, we've collected a lot of what I'm just going to call crud in here. And this shows just how much this system is working.
In its pilot phase, the C Street Project reduced stormwater runoff and associated pollutants by 98%.
This project is a good first step to bringing salmon back. When you start to see salmon dropping off, it's important because they're not that much lower than we are in the evolutionary chain.
Seattle, together with local, federal, and state agencies, has invested millions of dollars to protect and enhance fish habitat, and they anticipate investing millions more. Yet last year's salmon run was a record low. As the coalition attempts to turn the tide on urban pollution, it's finding out there is no easy solution to the larger problem of global warming.
We've had very unusual conditions the last 3 years with this global warming, or we don't know really what's going on, but we do know that the temperature of the water here close to the beach is significantly warmer than it historically has been in our lifetime. So, and very seldom this time of the year you'll see 63, 64 degree water here. I noticed today we're at 62 and a half. I think that's one reason salmon fishing is not that good. They don't like it this warm.
Global warming affects more than just the salmon. The Cascade snowpack has dropped an average of 50% since 1950.
Because we did not have that snow melting in the Cascades, it became clear that global warming is not something far in the future. It's not something far away. It's something that is here, it's now, and we have a responsibility to take action.
Seattle's Mayor Greg Nickels challenged other mayors across the country to join him in the fight against global warming by agreeing to the pollution-cutting goals of the Kyoto Protocol, an agreement our federal government refused to sign. To meet the Kyoto target dates, Seattle must seriously commit to non-polluting transportation and sustainable building practices.
As we build new facilities for the city, as we authorize and permit new buildings for the private sector, and really as we act in neighborhoods, we are trying to look at how do we do that in a sustainable fashion.
Sustainable building itself is a concept that uses technologies and practices that minimize the impact of building on the natural environment and also create better places for people to work, healthier environments. And it's also cost effective, so there's sometimes an initial investment, but over time that usually pays back. I would really like to see all of our private developers embrace sustainable building like the city has.
Winner of the 2005 Home Builder Award in the Built Green Design Competition, builder Martha Rose is deemed the Queen of Green. Yet Martha's career in the male-dominated field of construction has been a long, steep climb that began in 1972.
I was lucky and had a woman in my life who mentored me, and she used to drive home the point, whatever you do, get a job that pays a man's wage. And she actually helped push me out there on the construction jobs to ask for work. And the first time I went, I didn't get work, but after going out on a few jobs, I did get hired. It was very difficult. There was a lot of harassment. All the stuff you've heard about is true. Basically, it's been a long, hard road for me, and I've learned from the bottom up, and it's been a great journey, and if you just set your mind to the goal, you'll get there. And so the current goal is to really take advantage of green thinking. Every time you have an electrical box or a plumbing pipe, you always have a void. This method, you get a much completer coverage. What it means is lower heating costs. These boxes are equipment that are associated with the solar cells that are mounted on the roof that produce electricity. If the home is not using all of the electricity, what's left over goes back into the grid and actually makes the electrical meter spin backwards and giving you a credit on your electrical bill. This is a bamboo floor. It's finished with 3 coats of a water-based finish, and it's a really good material from the Built Green perspective because bamboo is a renewable resource. This countertop here is a product that's made from recycled paper with rosins. What's cool about this sink is it's made from 80% granite dust and 20% resins, and the granite dust would normally be an industrial waste product. We love the floors in this house. This is a marmoleum floor, and it's made from 4 natural ingredients: wood flour, pine rosin, flaxseed oil, and jute. This is the most exciting thing in the house. This is a dual flush toilet. This one offers a 0.8 gallon flush for liquids. I am following my dream of providing housing in a responsible manner.
Martha Rose is part of a growing commitment in Seattle towards sustainable building. The natural beauty of the city is why most of us live here. But what happens when the natural beauty conflicts with the greater needs of the city?
Well, you get an edifice like the Alaskan Way Viaduct. The Alaskan Way Viaduct is a double-decker freeway that runs along Seattle's Elliott Bay waterfront, carrying up to 110,000 vehicles per day. On February 28, 2001, the 6.8 Nisqually earthquake damaged the viaduct. Experts warned that the 1953 built structure could not withstand another major quake, nor could the adjacent 72-year-old seawall. All agree something must be done to ensure the safety of the people. What Seattle is not in agreement about is what? Over the years, there have been many plans for replacing the viaduct. The first option would be to rebuild the viaduct, fixing the safety issues at an estimated cost of $2.8 billion. This would address transportation safety, but still leave the shorefront noisy and visually unpleasant. A second option, preferred by a partnership with the City of Seattle, the State Department of Transportation, and the Federal Highway Administration, is a more costly but aesthetically pleasing plan. Replace the viaduct with a 6-lane tunnel at an estimated cost of $5.5 billion.
It will cost more in today's dollars, but the value of the benefits to our city from converting the scar of the viaduct to a waterfront park, a place for all people, and opening up our city to the glorious views of Elliott Bay, the Olympic Mountains, is priceless.
Both projects could take anywhere from 7 to 12 years to build, depending on how much access is maintained for traffic during construction. Tunnel advocates believe this is an opportunity to transform the front door of Seattle into a spectacular public gathering place for generations to come. But some critics don't want either a rebuild or a tunnel.
The proposal on the table puts in a serious armoring seawall, which means can't do anything good for marine habitat, can't do anything to connect people to the water. At best, we would be stuck with an elevated platform above the water, much like we have here. And look how many people are here. It's not what people want.
So we're pressing for an option that involves a whole bunch of strategies about getting traffic and transit through and opening up this what could be one of the most incredible spaces in the country.
Enter the People's Waterfront Coalition with their third alternative and by far cheapest and most controversial solution to this challenging issue. What if you just tore down the eyesore and put funds into restoring the waterfront in ways that are more creature-friendly? Pretty radical, huh?
This cover gone, opened up to the sky. We have green grass here where we have people playing frisbees, laying out, taking a nap in the sun, listening to the water sounds next door. We have people sitting at cafes over here on this building, sipping a cup of coffee like Seattle's known for, planning out what area they're going to kayak to on the waterfront next. This is a place where we're able to actually reconnect by putting in a beach here just south of the aquarium and adding some infill development with green strategies, green building strategies, where we have green roofs. We're doing good things with stormwater. One of the major problems is car exhaust runoff and stormwater contaminating the bank. To build a new innovative seawall that has salmon ladders off the side, which will allow the migrating salmon to have a shallow little corridor to swim in that lets them stay safe from predators, because right now the majority of our salmon have to go from the Duwamish through all the industrial along the entire length of the waterfront before they get a nice safe break where they can stop and eat and start to build themselves up before they go out to sea.
The city and the State Department of Transportation feel the coalition's alternative is unrealistic in its idealism.
We looked at that. We looked at what would happen if we removed the viaduct, put a 4-lane or a 6-lane surface street on the waterfront, and what would happen to transportation in Seattle. We found that congestion got to 12 hours a day on I-5. You would have a surface street on Alaska Way that would be carrying over 50 or 60,000 cars a day, as well as other downtown streets being congested. We didn't think that was an acceptable solution.
We're asking for a paradigm shift because we can't accommodate all the traffic without building a new highway. And we're saying that's okay. If you show people what they could have instead of a convenient commute in terms of a functional ecology, in terms of quality of life, in terms of being able to touch the water in Seattle, which you can't do now, we think people will choose that. So we want to offer people that choice. Would you be willing to sacrifice a little bit of the convenience of your commute for the larger public good?
To combat global warming and gridlock, Seattle must rethink its dependency on the automobile. One of these alternatives is the One Less Car program.
Well, the program recruited families within Seattle to give up their second or their only car for 6 weeks or 9 weeks and be part of a study.
If you can live in a place where you don't have to own a car, you can save $4,000 to $6,000 a year. And that bells are going off in people's heads, and they're also realizing that they're less stressed, and they're getting to know their neighbors more of a sense of community.
Found that it really wasn't a hardship. It's just a matter of who needs it more and who's got the kids. That's one of the biggest factors. You know, whoever is dropping off the kids somewhere, they usually get the car.
It just takes a little bit of extra planning on our part and a little bit of flexibility, and also a little bit of what's the word?
Communication?
Communication. The effort is worth it. We find that we spend more time together as a family as a result of this.
I think it's a good educational experience for kids to see that there are alternatives to just getting in the car and driving, you know, especially with just one person in the car. It just doesn't make any sense these days.
I'm not a real recreational biker. I mean, biking for me is transportation.
Another way to combat traffic is to ride a bicycle.
I'm Doug Walker here at my home in northwest Seattle. I ride my bike every day to work. It's 9.5 miles one way. It's a great way to start the day.
I've been doing the bike commuting for about 13 years. It works out that I can get with biking around town about 100 miles a week and a little over 4,000 miles a year. The car that I use at work is 10 years old and has 13,000 miles on it. My newest bike has over 30,000 miles. It influences a lot of other people to see other people biking, kind of realize the possibility. And you know, people are very intimidated by riding in traffic. So there is a learning curve, even if you know how to ride a bike. And riding a bike in an urban setting is a little bit of a different thing, and doing it safely.
If you're commuting from a certain area, you don't feel safe, you don't know how to do it, you can actually get a bike buddy. It doesn't cost you anything, and they will actually show you the route in. They'll show you the safest route, they'll show you the easiest route.
The city provides bike stations to make cycle commuting even more convenient.
This place is essentially a parking garage for cyclists. It's a non-profit shop that offers free indoor safe and dry parking for cyclists or commuters in downtown Seattle.
I didn't start riding my bike until I found out that this was here. So I used to take 2 buses, and now I am cut free from the schedule of the first bus.
The nice thing I especially notice is at the end of the day, you know, sort of decompressing after work. You know, biking is a real stress remover as you move from, you know, kind of the concerns of the office and back to the home. Biking is a great transition. And I have to tell you, it's sure a lot less stressful than driving a car.
For most of us, the automobile remains our primary source of transportation. But that doesn't mean we have to be a slave to high gas prices, foreign oil, and the pollution and cancers linked to petroleum-based fuels.
When Dr. Diesel, back in the turn of the century, said that we have to start thinking about our resources because petroleum products won't be with us forever. He was a very forthright and forward-thinking man.
Dr. Rudolf Diesel used peanut oil to fuel his innovative engine in its first public demonstration at the Paris World's Fair in 1898. The Bavarian inventor championed home-brewed biomass fuels as the means by which the common folk could afford his efficient new engine. But his good intentions did not come to fruition. Much controversy surrounds Dr. Diesel's death aboard an England-bound ship in 1913. Some say he jumped overboard, despondent over financial problems. Others speculate he was murdered because he disagreed with the German war machine and was on his way to sell his engines to the British Navy. Not only did his death pave the way for the German diesel-powered subs of World War I, but his engine was modified to run on the polluting petroleum fuel we now know as diesel, a fuel sadly misnamed since the doctor had intended his invention to be the foundation for society powered by clean, renewable, locally grown fuel.
People, you know, when I told them 3 years ago that I was going to sell my gas cars, my brand new Subaru Outback that had like 5,000 miles on it, that I was going to buy an old diesel car and run it on vegetable oil, they laughed, or they just walked away like, he's nuts. Biodiesel is as toxic as salt and biodegrades as quickly as sugar.
Any waste vegetable oil, animal fats, soybean oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil, any source of oil provides a good basis of biodiesel production.
Welcome to the world of alternative energy, where garbage can literally be turned into liquid gold.
We're going to the Moonlight Cafe. It's a Vietnamese restaurant that has a great vegetarian menu, so that's why I started going there. We love to eat there, and they also have some pretty nice oil.
Once a week, Lyle Rudensee, Bio Lyle as he refers to himself, visits several Asian restaurants. The owners are happy to see Lyle because he saves them the cost of having their barrels of used cooking oil hauled away.
Okay, I'm going to show you how I make biodiesel.
Since 2003, Lyle has been brewing biodiesel in a makeshift distillery in his garage.
It's exciting to just be able to go to my garage to fuel up. It's pretty simple. It's not rocket science. This tank I got for $76. Aquarium heaters are about $15. So really, it's just a couple $100 in equipment. It's not much. This is probably the crudest way of doing it. Very simple. It works great, but it's kind of crude. You can get slicker systems for making it. From start to finish, it takes about an hour and a half. My car, since it's a diesel, it gets pretty good mileage. I probably average about 40 miles per gallon. I'm making about 22-gallon batch, so that should last me a couple of weeks. It costs me about 65 or 70 cents a gallon to make it myself. I can't tell you how exciting it is to be able to make your own fuel and not have to go to gas stations, and also not to be connected to the whole petroleum system. Let's put some nice fresh biodiesel in my car.
Some folks are still brewing their own. Some people are getting their fuel directly. And then there's us with this co-op. So we prepay for the fuel and just keep a log of what we've used. This is the best part. With petroleum diesel, you would never touch it. This stuff's great.
What started out as a fuel cooperative is igniting a chain of market-driven biodiesel stations like Laurelhurst Oil.
This product right here is ASTM certified, so it has a consistent quality to it. And but no one's laughing anymore. Now our next move, of course, was to move it into the heating oil application.
Currently in Seattle, there are over 3,000 drivers who fuel their cars with biodiesel. That number continues to grow. In addition to personal cars, Seattle's biggest users of biodiesel are government fleets. As the demand for biodiesel increases, so does the need for local sources. In early 2005, Seattle Biodiesel, now called Imperium Renewables, became the first biodiesel refinery in the region.
This was my holy grail in life, that I was seeking some sort of method to be involved in alternative energy. We can change our entire infrastructure of society with biodiesel right now, today. That spurred me into jumping off the cliff and starting this business. We're a 5 million gallon a year facility, and I think as the market increases, the demand increases, we can look at increasing our production capabilities both here locally and then perhaps regionally.
I really believe in the American spirit, the American ability to innovate our way out of any problem. It's in the same way that, Kennedy rallied the nation to beat the Russians to the moon. If we had leaders that would rally the nation to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and put that amount of money that is needed into developing domestic alternatives, we could be there very soon.
It's not a pipe dream. It's not hydrogen. It's not 50 years away. It's not, I hope that we're going to have this technology at some point. It's now.
And yet, despite these growing sustainable practices, gridlock continues to be a major source of frustration in Seattle.
What we chose to do was invest in the car. So we invested in highways that go out to suburban areas where you have to have a car in order to go get a stick of gum.
The people of Seattle realized a modern rapid transit system might combat their road rage. The problem is deciding on what that metro transportation system will look like. This is something Seattle citizens have argued about for decades. In 1996, the Transit Authority won voter approval of a multi-county regional sound transit system combining light rail, commuter rail, and express buses.
The plan that was approved by our voters in 1996 contains almost 100 projects.
The challenge is how to incorporate these systems into an already developed city.
I've worked on the project to build light rail in Seattle for 15 years, about a third of my life. And I guess I approach it that each day we're going to make a little bit of progress, and ultimately either me or maybe it's my children or grandchildren are going to see the fruits of it.
I often make the joke that I hope that I am actually still alive to see some of these things actually happen. So it seems like it takes forever in Seattle.
Seattle has this tradition of leaders proposing this sort of urban renewal and citizens saying, no, we actually have a better idea, and winning.
Well, except for a couple years in a Turkish prison. Yeah, I've been here all my life. But it was a trumped-up charge, really.
Every city and community has them. Citizen activist is the polite name. Troublemaking nut job is the less kind adjective.
Still feel like I look like a dog breeding experiment gone awry.
Dick Falkenberry is probably a little bit of both. Jeez. But mostly, he's a sometimes tour bus taxicab driver who got fed up being stuck in Seattle traffic.
What Seattle was doing with rapid transit was virtually nothing, and what we were doing was wrong.
Unlike other angry motorists, Dick looked up and saw the future. Even though it has existed for over 100 years, monorail technology is often linked to futuristic travel. That's why the planners of the 1962 Seattle World's Fair decided to invest $3.5 million in a twin monorail system they intended to be much more than a 1.3-mile tourist ride from the fair to the city center. Fair planners intended the system to be extended after the fair, as far as the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Fair planners saw these sleek transports as the future of urban transportation. They weren't wrong. Monorails have the potential of being so much more than a theme park ride. The Japanese understand this. Currently, there are 5 different monorail systems in Japan. They travel over 50 miles with plans to extend them for another 50 miles. The advantages of monorails over subway, heavy and light rails are staggering. Monorails glide above streets on an exclusive separated guideway, making it impossible for them to collide with the pedestrians, cars, trucks, and buses below. That means they also aren't tied to street and highway gridlock either. Subway riders see only a dark tunnel, while monorail riders get breathtaking views. Because the beam is only 26 inches wide, the monorail guideway can be less invasive to the environment, rather than being an eyesore with wide, dark street producing shadows. Traditional rail systems can take decades to build, causing much disruption during construction. Because monorails have pre-built support pylons that are manufactured off-site, a monorail beamway can be hoisted from truck beds and fastened onto pylons in hours. For whatever reason, after the fair ended, there was no push to expand the monorail. In the late 1980s, there was talk of actually tearing it down to make way for the development of the Westlake Center shopping mall. But public outcry saved the tourist attraction. The monorail station was redesigned, and the line shortened a few feet to accommodate the mall. Even with these restrictions, the aging Seattle monorail continues to carry over 2 million passengers a year, and unlike most city transit systems, actually turns a profit each year. And so tour bus driver Dick Falkenberry looked up and saw an answer to Seattle's transportation woes. It's a solution that had been silently gliding above for over 40 years.
The monorail has a history, not only here but throughout the world, of really doing a pretty good job. It's a great way to go.
What separates a citizen activist, from the rest of us is that activists operate under the delusion that they can personally fix what's wrong with the universe. Dick soon found a simpatico in poet-activist Grant Cogswell, who we met earlier in the city's viaduct controversy.
We started with nothing. We started with card tables and signs with marker pens.
Together, Grant and Dick came up with an initiative that called for a 40-mile X-shaped monorail system that would link the city's 4 corners with downtown.
And Grant Cogswell came up with a point. He said, listen, you're trying to put these things on card tables where people can't see them. You gotta get them up in the air where people can see them.
I created something that I called the automatic petitioner, and that's basically 2 hollow core doors on 2 A-frames of 2x4s. With sort of this map of Seattle that I've got here on my shirt.
The only thing we paid for really was these signs that said extend the monorail, attach the petitions to them with a string and a pen on it. And some of those we left out for days without anybody monitoring these things.
They had a piece of plastic over them for the rain, and people would sign up on the petition for the monorail, and they would even take care of it, like make sure that the plastic was over the signatures afterwards, and it was really kind of touching.
Seasoned politicians laughed at their methods to gain public support.
And somebody said, hey, do you see this sign that jerk Falkenberry's got up for the monorail? And they were laughing about it and said, I never get it, never get it. And this guy named Tim Traynor says, no, not only are they going to get this, not only is he doing it right, he's going to get the signatures and he's going to pass. And they get, oh, you're crazy. He goes, no, do you notice that none of them are being torn down? Nobody's putting graffiti on those things. People want this thing.
For a cost of $2,000, all volunteer time, we got an initiative on the city ballot to build a 40-mile monorail system throughout the city. It passed.
The Seattle Popular Monorail Authority was formed to oversee the project. Among the appointed board members was University of Washington professor Christina Hill.
We have a lot of people on the board who have a lot of experience. It's very valuable for us. We have a former head of the Design Commission. We have the former head of the Metropolitan Transportation Agency. So we have Paul Tolliver, who's been the head of our transportation agency in the past. We have people who are downtown developers, a guy who's the CEO of the biggest downtown landowning firm. So we have people who are very important players in the region on the board and a lot of expertise. In fact, most boards of transit agencies are elected officials who don't necessarily have any technical or professional expertise.
It was decided the first monorail system would be a 14-mile green line running from the Ballard district to West Seattle. The cost of the Ballard line was projected at $1.75 billion. In 2003, the Monorail Board appointed Joel Horn as executive director, whose resume included working for the Nature Conservancy and overseeing the building of the corporate headquarters for Amazon.com. Joel took us for a bird's-eye view of the project.
We actually have a great route because we're going to all three stadiums. So you can go to our Mariners or the Seattle Sonics or the Seahawks on the monorail. But we also go right to the middle of our downtown, to the famous Pike Place Market or Pioneer Square, or to our retail core. We also take the monorail 2 stations at Seattle Center. Over 10 million people a year go to the Seattle Center. So we chose an initial route, our Green Line, to be a very heavily used route. And so we are forecasting 20 million trips a year. Right below us is the current monorail, and what I love about that is you notice it's one of the most green streets in Seattle, where if you look over at the viaduct carrying lots of cars, you know, that isn't very green. And one of the reasons for that is the monorail is so thin, and where you can carry so many people on a 3-foot wide piece of concrete. And let me tell you, when you're riding a monorail to work, it's going to be a joy. You're not going to have any road rage. You're going to actually be able to enjoy the views of the Puget Sound, not have your significant other yelling at you to keep your eyes on the road.
One of the earliest opponents to the monorail was attorney Henry Aronson. Mr. Aronson formed On Track, an organization dedicated to derailing the project.
I was against the project. There's no question. In the beginning, I was against it when the vote came up.
Opponents attacked the methods used to obtain bids to build the monorail.
And we think that the Monorail Authority has been very insular, unresponsive, and frankly has not given full disclosure of information that it could have made public many, many months before it began the construction negotiating phase.
They questioned whether a non-traditional grassroots organization like the Monorail Authority could oversee such a monumental project.
Part of the problem here is that this is not a real government either that's managing this project. Only 2 people are even appointed by the mayor.
This is not at all a rogue government. This is a government created by the people in 3 separate votes. I think that this is a government that they believe in, that they want to see get this job done. And what I've seen is that the government we've had before hasn't gotten the job done. This isn't about government. This is about the people wanting a city that they can enjoy quality of life in for the future. And I think this is the right organization to do that nimble, quick job of getting this project built for the riders and the voters.
The Monorail Authority purchased some $75 million worth of right-of-way over which the monorail was to travel, and were in final negotiations with a company that guaranteed it would build and run the monorail for the first 5 years. Monorail enthusiasts celebrated when the groundbreaking date was set for September 2005. Their dream was about to take wing.
Imagine a transit system that makes life better by making life easier.
But monorail opponents dug into the actual cost of the project. They accused the monorail of costing 1/3 more than first projected. They also claimed that the $1.75 billion of borrowed money would take 40 to 50 years to pay off. And what most people didn't know was that the monorail project would need even more money as early as 15 years later for upgrades and expansion.
But our project costs are still $1.94 billion in today's dollars, and that $11 billion is a number no one ever sees. It's a number, it's like there's the tip of the iceberg that you see in terms of the cost of public works. Then there's the financing of that public works over a 20 to 50 year period. And that number shows the financing of everything from people who clean the stairways, to people who change light bulbs, to new tires, everything over a 50-year period. And we've never seen that number for other projects. The only number the public has heard for the viaduct is the straight construction cost. If they talked about the real cost of that project, it would have to be in the $10 to $20 billion range.
If you take the total cost to society of roads, and you take the total cost to society of oil, and then you take the future costs of all of the pollution, monorail is a fraction of the cost.
They attacked Joel Horn personally, accusing him of secrecy by hiding the true cost to be paid, and with failing to prepare the people of Seattle for a far higher tax burden.
The Seattle Monorail Project Executive Director Joel Horn and Monorail Board Chair Tom Weeks abruptly resigned their posts after public uproar over the financing plan for the project.
Christina Hill found herself thrust into becoming the acting executive director of the besieged project.
There have been a lot of surprises in this project, and we've gone back to the ballot more times than I ever imagined we would, but I never thought that I would be the acting chair and that we'd be in this kind of a situation we're in right now.
There are moments where I wonder, my God, maybe I'm making a mistake, and then I realize I don't think so. I think I'm still on the right track, and I'm still doing it the best way I know how, with hopefully a sense of humor, hopefully a sense of proportionality. It's tough, it's tough to maintain that.
Dick Falkenberry found himself affected in ways he never expected.
In a weak moment, agreed to talk to a bunch of second-grade students. I was in a bad mood and frankly a little depressed. My life wasn't going all that well. And I'm thinking, these are a bunch of 8-year-olds. They're 10 years away from even being able to vote for this stinking thing. And I went in there and started talking to those kids, and I'll tell you, I felt so good when I got done. I mean, they were just so wonderful, and they were so hopeful. They were so excited about the idea of a monorail. They all really wanted to ride that thing. And they sent me a whole bunch of thank you letters, and I've still got some of them.
In September 2005, the monorail movement lost the support of an important ally.
This is one of the most disappointing days that I have had since I became mayor nearly 4 years ago. Today, I am withdrawing the city's support for the Seattle Monorail project. Put simply, the monorail does not have enough money to pay for the project. The financing plan presented to me is not prudent. In this case, the people have a decision to make too. The people created the Monorail Authority, and I respect the people's right to have the final say in its fate.
An initiative that would make or break the monorail was placed before the voters in November 2005. Christina Hill met with us before the election.
I think we're going to build it. This project has had 9 lives at least. I mean, I think it has 9 lives, and I don't think it's only used more than 3 or 4 of them. So I think it's going to get built. It just seems so the little train that could. It's such an important dream for the city of Seattle and a culmination of the whole 1962 World's Fair when the monorail was first introduced as a technology. It seems to have a momentum that's going to get it to happen.
And I said, what's going to be the best day on the monorail? And this kid raised his hand. I said, Dane, what is it? He goes, snow day. And I said, yes, because that's going to be the greatest day on that monorail. The whole city will be shrouded in white. We get this about once a year. Nothing moves because of the hills, and yet this monorail will just be gliding over. It'll be so beautiful. People that have to get someplace can be able to get someplace, but the view will just be stupendous.
Election day came.
And there are some pretty big changes in store for just about everyone. For starters, the Seattle monorail is dead by a vote of 64%.
I've lost confidence in the monorail agency to actually build a transportation project that works.
The public spoke with their votes, and a dream died.
The Seattle Monorail Board is on fast track to shut down. They met last night to discuss the best way to dissolve and to sell the nearly $70 million in property it acquired.
2 weeks later, the Seattle monorail again made the news.
Witnesses described the terrifying sound as the 2 monorails slammed into each other.
It hits like a boom.
Terrifying moments for holiday shoppers in downtown Seattle as the 2 monorail trains crash into each other on a sharp curve near Westlake Center.
Years earlier, to accommodate the Westlake Center Mall, a curve was made more narrow. An accident resulted when one monorail train failed to give right-of-way to the other train. The city questioned whether the tourist attraction was worth saving. After weeks of debate, the answer was yes.
I think someday our grandchildren will look back on this, and I think they'll be as shocked as when we hear about our grandparents putting mercury into drinking water.
Perhaps many, many years from now, someone will again look up and see the future.
We are tomorrow what we start today.
Since the defeat of the Seattle Monorail project, Joel Horn took a job consulting for a new biodiesel refinery. Christina Hill left Seattle to become professor and director of landscape architecture at the University of Virginia. Grant Cogswell now works as a screenwriter and has produced his first feature film scheduled for release this year. Dick Falkenberry? Well, Dick continues to drive a tour bus and complain about the Seattle traffic. Life continues, but we can't let defeat make us cynical, nor can we fear failure. Like our friend the salmon, we must continue to swim against the current and power over obstacles. The survival of our species depends on it. Our next story is also about endings and beginnings. Located in one of the highest elevated areas in the city, High Point was originally constructed during World War II as temporary housing for thousands of workers that flooded into Seattle seeking jobs in the aircraft and shipbuilding industries. Originally considered a temporary solution to the housing shortage, the population boom continued after the war. In 1952, High Point was converted into low-income housing, and the community changed. By 2000, High Point was a diverse, predominantly poor, dilapidated neighborhood with an average income of less than $11,000 a year. The city took a long, hard look at the worn-out public housing units and decided that redevelopment was long overdue. Complicating matters, flowing through the 130-acre site is Longfellow Creek.
So what we have here is Longfellow Creek, and this is where the salmon come. The coho salmon migrate up here to spawn. This is one of our most productive coho streams in the city.
The creek itself had become ravaged by pollution and urban development. The past has taught us that isolating poverty only breeds despair and crime. Upward mobility blossoms where diversity is celebrated and lives intertwine. The Seattle Housing Authority had its work cut out for itself. They needed a holistic plan that would improve the quality of life for both humans and fish. All paths pointed toward a more sustainable solution. A number of residents were reluctant to see their homes demolished. They feared that there would be no place for them in the new development. Community meetings were conducted to involve the populace in the planning. Experts tried to explain the advantages of mixed-income neighborhoods and the need to create community through nature. For many, it was a giant leap of faith to see their beloved community destroyed. Once demolished, High Point became a clean slate.
This reminds me of the Serengeti Plain right now, because we've got
On February 6, 2004, project manager Tom Phillips and Miranda Maupin from Seattle Public Utilities meet on the vacant site to discuss the project.
This is a very rare opportunity for Seattle because we're about 99% fully developed.
One of the things about Seattle is that people are open to innovation. You know, Seattle has the reputation for that, and this is showing that we can lead the way on a lot of things, and it's incredibly exciting what we're doing here.
Of the 1,600 planned units, half will be designated for low-income families and seniors, while the rest will be sold or rented at market value. Regardless of the income of the occupants, nearly all units will be energy efficient and constructed to the Built Green 3-star standard.
We're applying the C Street prototype, the pilot project, to a whole sub-basin of the Longfellow Creek watershed.
A large pond is being constructed that will not only beautify the community, but collect and clean surface stormwater runoff before it enters Longfellow Creek. Despite all the renovation, much has been done to protect and preserve the elder residents of High Point.
We're saving over 100 trees. How we're saving them is there's signs around the trees that say the value of this tree is, well, that one down here is actually $71,000. That's the highest one. So that if a contractor messes with the root system at all, they're subject to actually paying that amount. There's a bunch of kids who live in a tutoring program, and they, when they found out about what we were doing, they actually each adopted a tree. And that's Big Papa over there. So they gave it names, and I've assured them that we are saving Big Papa.
Groundbreaking Day, a time for celebration and speeches.
The renewal of High Point, the creation of a community here where we are not setting adrift those who are without resources, but we will do it in a community that has a good, healthy mix of activities and incomes, people who own their own homes, people who are renting, people who are coming out of homelessness. And that mix is what really creates a great city.
5 months later, we join Tom and Miranda again. With them is future High Point resident Salamawit Cabrices. Tom and Miranda take Salamawit on a tour of her future home.
Has the living room here, the kitchen in the middle.
Salamawit's duplex will be among the 35 Breathe Easy homes built to significantly decrease the risk factors that cause asthma among low-income families.
I'm happy because they're going to build for my kids is sick, you know, they have asthma. My dreams come true because I've been looking for my kids because my son been sick for 4 years and I have hard time, but right now I'm excited to see that. I'm really happy.
2 months later, the first homes at High Point are completed. A family inspects a prospective new dwelling. What's not to like? High Point's public housing is a far cry from the public housing ghettos in other cities.
And that tree looks good. Yeah.
This is going to be a great place for the kids to play.
So this is the big day. The first family's moving in. We're very excited. It's been a long haul. Yeah. So we were able to save Big Papa. I'm going to go show it to you. So
all right.
Take a look at it.
The first moving vans are pulling up.
Guys, stop!
Soon, a construction site will be a home, and after that, a neighborhood. If High Point proves successful, it could open the door to other sustainable neighborhoods, not only in Seattle, but all over the world. The stakes are high.
What's going on here is much bigger than just some new housing that's being built.
So we feel like, you know, if you can do it here in the middle of urban Seattle, you can do it anywhere.
Today is an important day at Stevens Elementary School in downtown Seattle. Teacher Dave McMillan and his 4th grade class are about to embark on an important field trip that will be the culmination of 6 months of hard work and study. They're part of a statewide 300-school program based around salmon.
Last Friday, we had a field trip up to the Cedar River watershed, and they're just learning how to make the connection about what we do on land affects what happens to the water, and then, of course, what happens, the condition of the water affects the salmon run.
Each January, schools receive a batch of fertilized salmon eggs to deposit in a tank. Students raise the fish while their teachers incorporate environmental issues into their lesson plans. Nearly all the children in Seattle have participated in this program.
My kids, as they grew up and went through Seattle Public Schools, for instance, grew salmon. Well, my children could tell me every year how many coho had returned to that stream, and it was important to them that that creek be taken care of.
Time to put their lessons into practice.
We're off to Lake Washington!
Well, you know, our generation is probably doomed to some of the habits and attitudes that we have. We can learn and we can change a bit, but it's the next generation that I think is going to have the largest impact.
Hopefully, this stewardship to protect nature will not only be remembered, but passed on by these students to their children and their children's children.
So we want to get down and put our bottles into the edge of the water. Can you do this, everybody?
I don't think of cities as utopias. I think of cities as new. When you think of it in urban design history or human history, cities are like a 5,000-6,000 year old phenomenon. And I think there's so much about cities that we're still learning how to get right. That's what's exciting to me about working in cities. Is the idea of an Eden seems like something you could have had at one time and then lost. But I think actually the city is just emerging now. This is the time when we can prove whether cities will be a kind of flowering and celebration of human culture, or whether we're going to not live up to the potential of what it is when all of us live in such close contact with each other and can share dreams and acknowledge each other.
As they release the tiny salmon fry, it's a time of renewal, of hope, and new beginnings. The future truly is now.
To learn more about your sustainable environment and how to bring your community together, please visit us at pbs.org/sustainability. seattle.org. Major funding for Eden's Lost and Found was made possible by CDM, seeking to create lasting environmental and infrastructure solutions that strengthen a community's future. The Boeing Company, committed to ongoing innovation in environmental conservation. Boeing, forever new frontiers. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Additional funding was provided by Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, the Illinois Sustainable Education Project, Ashoka, the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company, Seattle Office of Sustainability and the Environment, APTA, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, the Philadelphia Water Department, FJC, and Newman's Own Organics.